What are the results? I mean, how effective are these? I know they're obviously very effective, or else people wouldn't be talking about them. But how effective are they for diabetics? How effective are they for the obese?
Mm-hmm. So there are some profound, there are some really profound weight loss results from these medications, especially in the early trials. In certain ones, they saw a mean weight loss of about 15% loss in the semaglutide trials, and in the tirzepatide or Mounjaro or Zepbound trials, there were upwards of 20% in certain instances of weight loss.
And just to put real numbers on that, because my brain has to do that. So you're talking about a 300-pound person dropping down to 240 pounds, presumably. But
yeah,
much
the one study
weight.
I have, average starting weight was 231 pounds, 72 weeks. Average weight loss was 15%, so that equated to 34 pounds on a 5 milligram dose. Then for 10 milligrams, it went up to 48 pounds or 20.9%. I'm sorry, I have it out. It was 15% for the 5 milligram, 34 pounds, 19 and a half. So a nice jump from 5 to 10, 44 pounds there.
Wow.
And then the 10 to 15 milligram wasn't a big jump. It went from 44 to 48. So 19 and a half to 20.9%. Sorry, I jumped over the one loss there.
No.
And then they did have placebo constituents in there as well. They lost 3.1% or 7 pounds. Yeah, and in that same study, they also studied diabetics. Their weight was similar, about 222 pounds. Their weight loss was not as significant. This was just a Zepbound study, but it was still significant, but not as.
Right.
So it was 28 pounds, about 12.8%, because remember, they started at a little bit of a lower weight too. For the 5 milligram, it was 33 pounds for the 10. So yeah, it was interesting to see that there's just a higher bar for need of regulation in the diabetics. It's harder to move the needle in that way, but it was still very significant.
That's fantastic. What else did you want to add something else?
In general, just for frame of reference, the question to ask is what's accepted as a clinically meaningful amount of weight loss? And
so Dante, what's acceptable as a clinical meaningful amount of weight loss? I just want to sound like I know smart things.
So in general, you're looking for a 5 to 10% loss, and that is substantial in and of itself. And now again, you're hearing 15%.
Yeah. Up to 20%.
Upwards of 20, 21%, 26.5% or so in an 84-week study with tirzepatide. I mean, this is really substantial. And so if you're adhering to lifestyle guidelines and you have tried different things with as far as your own dietary interventions and you're hitting 5 to 10% of weight loss, I mean, that is still what would be considered incredibly successful. It's just that these medications just take this to a new level.
Yeah. So it helps provide a more powerful tool for making the changes that are necessary to reverse that disease state. Mm-hmm. Amazing. I
don't want to lose that point. That is a huge point. And I know we were going to save the philosophical stuff, but I'm glad that you said that, because this isn't.
Why don't you say it again?
Because this isn't in all of what Joey and how he beautifully explained how these drugs work. He did not once mention that it sped up metabolism. It was a stimulant. It was that it made me sweat. It's a fat burner. It's at no point did he mention that. But the one thing we didn't mention is that in all of these clinical trials, the first thing in a fundamental layer to these interventions were that all of these participants had intensive lifestyle intervention. So never are we saying that that's not first and foremost. But if you're able to put somebody in a position, like you said, to better adhere to all the lifestyle changes that are always fundamentally recommended,
right? You
are moving the needle better than we ever have.
Yeah.
And that is a huge point, because it's not to say that we shouldn't try to leverage different changes at the level of policy and, schools and education, right, and certain ingredients and laws and all these kind of things, which is a whole separate issue. It's not that you don't look to it's not that you ignore those more large scale changes. It's just that we have a really, really, really powerful one here that can change the underlying biology of somebody and help them better interact with their surrounding environment. So why not at least be open to that?
Yeah. On an individual level, I can be very excited about policy changes or changing packaging on food or whatever.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily change my life today. And if this is an issue I'm facing, having a tool that can help me make those major lifestyle changes in this process, and to even consider looking at it as almost like, because then there's a part of me that makes it almost sounds like, well, are these medications, do these serve as a crutch to getting to where you want to go? And that, again, just in our discussion of obesity as a chronic disease and how it manifests, that is an incorrect way to look at it. It's not really a crutch. This is something that moves the needle because of what it does to what's going on under the hood. Okay, so this does sound way too good to be true. Yeah. What is the downside other than it being insanely expensive? There's got to be something else that happens. This is a very delicate system. When you start messing with this system, there are side effects. Yeah. What do those look like with these drugs?
Primarily, whenever you start them, it's GI. It's nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, decreased appetite, which I don't know if you view that as a side
kind
effect.
Of the point, isn't
constipation,
it?
abdominal pain.
Okay.
Those are like the core, and especially what I think is important to mention is why when I mentioned some of the newer versions of these drugs, the Mounjaros and Zepbound, they have all these different doses. And it's really because everybody's going to respond to it a little differently. So you can start low, you can creep up, and potentially avoid some of these side effects. Because if maybe you got thrown on a middle dose, maybe you get the side effect, I can't take this drug, there's only one other option. Instead, you've got all these little markers there. So that's in terms of just basic day-to-day side effects, a lot of GI stuff.
Okay. And I mean, the ones you mentioned, those are not non-issues.
No, definitely not. And they can be pretty intense. They definitely can be.
Do they, it sticks around for the entirety of use, or is it just, you said it's initial titrating up the dose, getting to that comfort level?
I think part of it is you always can go backward on doses too. I mean, if you start on a low dose and it's causing that, odds are maybe the drug's not for you. Maybe you stick it out for a little period of time. I don't know if you have more details on that, but really it's going to be about what you're going to see most of the time. I started on 2.5. I'm fine. I started on 5, and then I'm on to 5, and this 7.5 is doing it. I can go back to 5. Yeah. And it allows you to still get effect. Like when I mentioned that one study that there wasn't necessarily between the doses, these massive differences that, oh my God, I've got to max out or it's not worthwhile. Cost doesn't go up. So if settling on a dose to mitigate these side effects works for you, don't feel the pressure to go up, live your life, feel good. Don't have all those GI side effects.
Right. Absolutely. Anything else? Any other major issues? Because there's a ton of headlines and we can talk about those another time. Is this a forever drug? Is this, once I start this, I'm on it for the rest of my life?
Great question. And the simple answer is yes.
Okay. That's a simple answer.
But I know that's an answer that, certainly can make, the knee jerk reaction there is to be uncomfortable with that answer.
Yeah.
I have to be on this for my entire life. But again, to kind of wrap this neatly into with a little bow, it's just that, again, we understand obesity as a chronic disease. It has all the makings of a chronic disease and how it manifests. So yes, if you are somebody that has hypertension and maybe you made a handful of lifestyle changes, maybe you eventually come off your blood pressure medication.
Right.
But in general, if you've had a cardiovascular event, there are medications that they will put you on to decrease the likelihood of another major event happening. We're not often questioning, well, why do I need my Plavix? Why do I need this, this sort of short list of medications?
Right.
We're not always asking that because we take
my statin.
Right. And we take the conditions associated with those medications very seriously. And I think that we need to give credence to this in the same way and understand that even based on the evidence, when we do discontinue these drugs, we do see weight gain occur. To what extent? I think a lot of that's still being fleshed out.
Sure.
But a potential to return to baseline. And that's, you know, again, the big picture of what I'm trying to say there is just view this similarly to some of these other, you know, medical conditions that we take very seriously. And we're not always asking, well, when can I stop taking my heart medication, or when can I start taking my liver medication? It's begin to try to see this another way.
Yeah,
that can help answer. You can help somebody answer that question on their own, as if, do I need to be on this forever?